I love stories. I love hearing them. I love reading them. Of course, I like seeing them acted out, like plays or films or things on TV. In fact, if you think about it, I bet most of the things that you watch on TV or on video are some kind of a story. It can be a story about real human beings, or it might be a story about animals, or it might be a cartoon. It might be a story about completely imaginary creatures. It might be a story about toys that come to life. There's lots and lots of those. But stories are terrific. And as I say, I like stories very, very much indeed. The great thing about a story is that you can imagine yourself in the story. I bet you've all done this, with a good story. You think, first of all, what it would be like if I was this character, this person. What if I was that character, that person? I can see myself in it, in the way that story works its way out. Stories are all different sorts, aren't they? Some of them are very, very funny. They're just funny stories. Some of them are very sad stories about the terrible things that happen to people. Some of them are very violent stories. I'm not quite so fond of those. Some of them are really happy and joyful, peaceful sorts of stories. And of course, most stories have got different bits in, stories about something that starts really sad and ends up, you know, happy or good. Stories teach us things. Stories teach us by showing us. They show us what it's like to be loyal to someone. They show us what it's like to be good to someone who's lonely, say. They show us what it's like to be generous. They show us what it's like to be brave and how we might learn to be brave, although we don't start off being very brave. Stories tell us all sorts of really good things. And the good thing about a story, for most of us anyway, certainly for me, is I remember stories. If someone just stood up and gave me a lesson about how good it was to be brave or honest or what a good thing it is to be a good friend, well, that's good, that's great. But if someone tells me a story showing me that, I'll remember that much, much better. And if it's a really good story, the nice thing is you can hear it over and over and over again, and you don't get tired of it. Some of the stories that I heard when I was your age, I still love to hear because they're really good things. They tell us about ourselves and they show us what life is like and they show us what our lives could be like if we wanted. Now, someone really knew about how important stories were. And of course, it's Jesus. The way Jesus taught his disciples, the way he taught all the crowds that followed him, he didn't stand up and give them a lecture and say, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, don't do that. I mean, there's a little bit of that. But mostly what he does is he tells them stories. And often they're stories that they just have thought, well, that's interesting, that's about a shepherd, or that, and then they'll go away, they think, oh, wait a minute, no, it's not just about that. And nearly always, you end up thinking, actually, that's about me, isn't it? That's about the things I do. And when you see them in a story, you can sort of see them out there and make sense of them. There's a special name for the stories Jesus told. They're called parables. And in my opinion, they're some of the best stories anyone has ever told. And 2,000 years later, everyone, lots and lots of people, still think they're marvelous and they learn new things about them. When stories are as good as the stories that Jesus told, some of them are really, really, really short. When they're that good, they help us to learn about ourselves and they help us to see what our story is, the story of my life, the story of your life. And also, they help us to see how, with the strength of God, we can rewrite the story of our lives and make it better, and more joyful, and more peaceful, and more helpful, to those around us. Thanks be to God. Amen.